The gymnasium fell silent as Admiral Peterson walked to the podium, his chest heavy with medals earned over 3 decades of service. It was Navy Family Day at the base in Virginia Beach, and hundreds of families filled the bleachers. The Admiral had given this speech a dozen times, talking about sacrifice and duty, but today felt different. Today, he noticed an older man sitting alone in the back row, wearing a faded baseball cap and a jacket that had seen better days. After the ceremony, Peterson mingled with families, shaking hands and posing for pictures. He made his way toward the man in the back, something about him pulling at the Admiral's attention. As he got closer, he noticed the weathered lines on the man's face, the kind that came from years of sun and salt water, and eyes that held stories most people would never understand. Enjoying the ceremony, Peterson asked, extending his hand. The man stood slowly, arthritis evident in his movements, and shook it firmly. "Reminds me of the old days." "Sir, you served?" Peterson asked, though something in his gut already knew the answer. "Long time ago," the man said with a slight smile. Peterson, feeling jovial after the successful event, decided to engage in what he thought would be pleasant small talk. "Teams?" he asked, using the informal term for SEALs. The man nodded. "What was your call sign?" Peterson asked with a grin, expecting something amusing. In his experience, the older generation of operators often had colorful nicknames that made for good stories. The man hesitated, his eyes growing distant. "Iron Ghost," he said quietly. The Admiral's smile vanished. His hand, which had been resting casually at his side, unconsciously moved to attention. Iron Ghost. He'd heard that name exactly once, 15 years ago. During a classified briefing about operations in Somalia during the 90s, the officer conducting the brief had mentioned it in passing. A legend whispered about in the teams, a man who'd completed missions that officially never happened. "Robert Chen," Peterson whispered, his voice barely audible. The old man's eyes met his, and he gave the slightest nod. Peterson felt his throat tighten. He was standing before a ghost indeed, a man whose actions had saved countless lives but whose name had been scrubbed from official records for security reasons. Chen had been part of operations so sensitive that most of his own commanders never knew the full scope of what he'd done. "Sir, I had no idea," Peterson stammered, suddenly feeling like a green recruit again. Chen waved his hand dismissively. "Ancient history, Admiral. I'm just here to watch my grandson graduate from Bud S next month. Wanted to see what the new generation is walking into." Peterson's mind raced. This man, this legend, was here as a grandfather, blending into the crowd like any other proud family member. "Your grandson is going into the teams. Wouldn't have it any other way," Chen said, a hint of pride breaking through his reserved demeanor, though his grandmother worries. "She always did, even when I'd come home and couldn't tell her where I'd been or what I'd done." The Admiral glanced around the gymnasium, at all the young families celebrating, at the new SEALs proudly wearing their tridents, oblivious to the living legend standing among them. Would you be willing to speak to our graduating class?" "Just a few words." Chen shook his head gently. "My time in the spotlight was never my time, Admiral. I did what needed doing, same as every man who's ever worn the trident. The real heroes are the ones who didn't make it home. I was just lucky." But Peterson saw something else in those weathered eyes. It wasn't luck. It was skill, determination, and a kind of courage that transcended mere duty. Chen had given everything to his country, including his anonymity, and now he stood here asking for nothing in return, content to watch the next generation carry the torch. "Iron Ghost," Peterson said softly. "It's an honor, sir, a true honor." Chen smiled then, a genuine warmth breaking through. "The honor was mine, Admiral. Every single day I served, every mission, every moment. And now, watching my grandson follow this path, knowing he's joining something bigger than himself, that's the real reward. That's what all those classified nights and unnamed sacrifices were for. So the next generation could have something worth protecting." As Chen turned to leave, Peterson stood frozen, watching the old warrior shuffle toward the exit. He thought about his own career, his medals, his accolades, and realized he'd just met someone who'd given more and asked for less than anyone he'd ever known. The Admiral never forgot that encounter. Iron Ghost had taught him one final lesson without saying a word. True heroism doesn't need recognition, it only needs purpose.